Hey everyone, Dustin here, back with another video, and today we're doing a game that's a bit more spooky. I actually almost skipped on doing a Halloween video this year because I'm not really a fan of horror games, but then it hit me.
That guy got hit in the head with a coconut!
What better game to cover than The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge? Now, as you may be able to tell from the title of the game, this is in fact a sequel to the movie. Yes, there is another sequel, but I don't know how to read, so we're just gonna skip that one. This actually was the last brand new game that Disney collaborated with Capcom on. First revealed at E3 2005, and from the trailer, you actually can't tell at all Capcom was involved with this title, as the name isn't mentioned anywhere. But enough about that, let's dive into the game. So, we're immediately greeted by the game's logo while circling around the holiday doors. And what I thought originally was just to be an instrumental of This Is Halloween, we actually just get the song itself, which really surprised me. After selecting New Game, we get to see a really cool cinematic intro for the game that does a really good job at putting us into the world of Halloween Town. We move into the town hall where we see everyone talking about how good Halloween was this year, but Jack wants the next one to be even better because he feels he's losing his Pumpkin King touch. After telling the doctor he wants new ideas and new discoveries, he brings out the Soul Robber. We will be seeing a ton of this throughout the game. Jack loves the Soul Robber and goes out in search of new ideas for the next Halloween. Shortly after, we see Lock, Shock, and Barrel are once again scheming to bring back Oogie Boogie so we can take over Halloween Town while Jack is gone. We now skip to December 23rd and see Sally's writing a letter to send to Jack wherever he is. This will become more important later. So, Chapter 1 instantly throws us in on Jack's return to Halloween Town, but everything seems off. The town is deserted, and after the main gate closes behind him, he is greeted by a skeleton, but they're here to hurt him. After this, we get to see what the gameplay is like, and honestly, it is very reminiscent of Devil May Cry, but sorta dumbed down for younger audiences. As we are clearing the town square, Oogie comes onto the sound system to announce he is now the new ruler of Halloween Town and declares the new name is Oogie Town. Also, an interesting choice is having This Is Halloween being the battle theme for Halloween Town. The entrance to the town hall opens up and Jack quickly follows, but after being told to save. We enter the town hall but we're greeted by a shadow. But not just any shadow, the shadow of Oogie Boogie. So here we get to see what the boss fights are going to be like. Most boss fights in this game actually are musical bosses. You hit the boss or other enemies to make them drop musical notes to fill the music gauge. Once this gauge is full, it starts a musical sequence, and at the end you do big damage.
Now that's a lot of damage!
I think going this route with the bosses, since the music of the movie is so memorable, it makes the bosses so much more fun than they would be without it. These musical sequences actually do get harder as the game progresses, and I actually had issues with a couple of these, but we'll get there when we get there. After dealing the final blow, Oogie's shadow tells us we have beginner's luck and that we will meet again, but we receive the Halloween holiday door. Wonder what that's about. Now after this scene, we see this game has a grading system just like Devil May Cry, and if we get at least all A's, we get a cool trophy of a character in the game. So Chapter 2 brings us back to the town square and tells us to talk to this kid by the fountain. We're told terrible things happened while he was gone, and we learn the fountain actually gives Jack a full heal. Thank God for that. After doing some exploring, we find a hidden area in the game. These are scattered all over the place and don't really serve any purpose outside of a few times you're required to clear them for the story. They usually just drop a trophy and don't do much else. We then make our way to the witch's shop and they're excited to see Jack has returned and tells him he can buy whatever he wants to help them get the town back in order. Here we can buy crystal bottles, which hold fountain water for an extra full heal, blue souls, which power up the Soul Robber, and golden pumpkins. Each one gives Jack an extra point of health. These golden pumpkins are also hidden throughout the game, so you can get extra health without spending money if you so choose. The other witch offers upgrades to Jack's weapons and abilities. More on this later. After we leave the shop, Jack then wonders why the main gate can't be opened, so he talks to the kid again and he tells him Clown might have it, and he's in a manhole by the gate. After clearing the enemies out, Clown gives us the key and we can finally leave Halloween Town, and that ends Chapter 2. In Chapter 3, we head towards this giant tree in the background, but we see there is a smaller tree called the Hanging Tree. He tells us his hanging men are missing because they're scared off by Oogie's monsters. But before we can get to Zero's grave, we're stopped by Lock, Shock, and Barrel, and we have to take out their group of skeletons to be able to move on. After this, we pick up Zero and start looking for the hanging men. I can't lie, this is the first part of the game where I got a little lost and couldn't quite find where to go because a lot of times the game does not hold your hand, which is okay, but it also makes it really easy to get lost. After finding the hanging men and returning them to the hanging tree, he thanks us to end this chapter. Chapter 4 consists of us once again talking to the hanging tree and going around the graveyard pulling all the gravestones up to steal them and stop the monsters from spawning. Spoiler alert, they still spawn throughout the entire game. This actually does nothing and serves no purpose aside from filler being filler. After pulling up the gravestones, the hanging tree tells us he heard a woman singing from under the ground to end Chapter 4. Chapter 5 has us go after the singing woman Jack only assumes to be Sally to try and save her from Oogie's clutches. As we make our way to where Sally is being held, Locke stops us in our tracks and challenges us to a fight. This time we actually fight him instead of fighting a bunch of skeletons, which I thought honestly was a nice touch. This fight really isn't anything special, but we do get to hear Lock, Shock, and Barrel's song, and it's really catchy. We then make our way down to where Sally is, but we're met by a giant spider, and we get to hear a special Oogie's Revenge version of Sally's song that only plays when we fight the giant spider. Again, the boss fights in this game are so much fun when combined with the musical aspect of the movie. We save Sally and are rewarded with the Valentine's Day holiday door, and Sally assures Jack the town is now safe with his return to Halloween Town. Chapter 6 has us go check on the doctor, as Jack thinks Oogie may have done something with him too. With the key Sally gave us, we make our way towards the doctor's lab, but we see he has his security on. So we go to the top and see that the panel to turn it off is boarded off. However, since saving Sally, we gained the ability to turn into the Pumpkin King to breathe fire. This will come in handy in many spots throughout the game, and it is very useful for combat. After turning the security off, we're met by Igor, and he says he cannot under any circumstance let anyone into the lab, unless Jack brings him a bone biscuit. So we make our way back to the shop to try and buy one, but she says the kid from earlier just purchased the last one they had. So we find him, and he says he's only going to give it to us if we pass his Halloween Town quiz. And after skillfully answering the quiz, and getting a solid 8 out of 10 questions correct, he gives us the bone biscuit, and we can make our way back to the lab. After giving him the biscuit, he just immediately eats it, and the chapter ends. No text, no thank you, just black screen integrating my gameplay. You're so welcome, Igor. Chapter 7 starts with Igor saying he enjoys his biscuit and lets us through, but the doctor's circuit is stopping us from entering, so we have to go destroy it. After solving a quick puzzle that allows us to smash the generator, it actually only turns off for a minute and a half. We barely manage to enter the lab with 20 seconds remaining, but just as we make our way in, we're stopped by Shock, which, shocker, has another trap for us to stop us from reaching the doctor. This is just a simple dodge of the rolling ball section, nothing too crazy to talk about really. Once we make it to the top, we enter the doctor's lab, finishing this chapter off. Chapter 8 begins with us actually reaching the top of the doctor's lab, but everything seems fine. Until he scratches his brain and Jack sees it has just been swapped. This boss is interesting because it is the first boss that isn't just hitting the enemy over and over. So this boss actually has a completely new song for this game, called the Doctor's Song, or Dr. Finkelstein's Song. While we attack the robotic parts to drop music notes, we have to use the Soul Robber to open up the Doctor's head. We use his old brain and throw it at his new one to damage him. This was also a really fun fight, and I have no gripes with it. At the end, we finally swap his brain back and are rewarded with the St. Patrick's Day holiday door. The Doctor apologizes and wonders why the door is here, but asks what today's date is, and realizes it's almost Christmas. They then realize they need to find the Christmas Day door, and Jack needs to go through the pumpkin patch. But the Doctor goes away to invent something to help. That mixed with Jack's old Santa costume, we now have our final new ability for the game. The Santa outfit gives us 3 different kinds of presents to throw. One that stuns enemies and unpossesses them of Oogie Boogie to make them less powerful, one that encases them in ice to freeze them, and the other just kinda stuns them and does nothing else. Now before we go into the next chapter, let me just take a second to thank you guys that watch my videos. You guys are honestly the best. However, 99.5% of you are not subscribed, so if you like what you see, make sure to like and subscribe and maybe even browse some of my other content. Now back to the video. Chapter 9 has us heading towards the pumpkin patch, and honestly not much happens this chapter story-wise. It just has us going through the pumpkin patch and taking out enemies, and introduces us to Behemoth the pumpkin farmer. He doesn't really serve much purpose to the plot other than just being upset that Oogie's minions are eating all the pumpkins. Chapter 10 has us going through a second portion of the patch, but in the form of a maze. But this isn't really a maze, we kinda just have to go around hitting the pumpkin heads that allow us to progress. After being greeted by Lockshock and Barrel, they remind us that they are just getting started and we have yet to see their biggest trick, but Barrel spoils that they've done something with the mayor's house. After we make our way through the maze, we find a giant pumpkin head and decide to head that way. In Chapter 11, we actually venture into the pumpkin, taking out waves of enemies as we make our way to the bottom, where we see Barrel. Barrel is shocked we made it through his maze, and he takes that personally and decides to fight us. One phone call to Child Protective Services later, we defeat him and are rewarded with the Thanksgiving holiday door. Chapter 12 has us making our way towards the mayor's house to see what the three kids did to it. We can't make any progress without the key to the residential area of Halloween Town. Clown has it, but Oogie's monsters put rockets in his skates, so he can't stop to help us out. So we head back to the doctor's lab and he gives us a tool to fix Clown's skates. We then use a present to stop him in place and we fix his skates, and he opens the door for us, completing the chapter. Chapter 13 actually has us exploring the residential district of Halloween Town, but when we get there, we learn that Oogie Boogie turned the vampire brothers into bats, and we have to find them and bring them back to their house to rest and turn them into normal vampires. Because, vampires are normal, I guess. This was by far one of the most annoying parts of the game, because the game doesn't tell you how to capture them. So when you find your first one, you're spending most of your time trying to just figure out how to catch them. Luckily, having the foresight to check your map, it gives you a clue that they love presents. So we have to use Santa Jack to lure them in, but that still doesn't tell us how to grab them. Luckily, I eventually find out that you can just use the grab from the Soul Robber to get them. However, the first bat I found when playing was by far one of the most annoying parts of the game. Between the giant skeleton fish and the bat randomly moving around and the Soul Robber platforming, it just was not a fun time. When approaching the bat on the rooftops, Oogie comes onto the sound system once again to announce that he stole all of the holiday leaders and is holding them hostage, making him the 7 Holidays King. Now, more motivated than ever, we find and deliver all of the bats and turn them back to normal. In doing so, they each give us a piece of the key required to get into the mayor's house. In Chapter 14, we actually approach the mayor's house, but before we walk in, the mayor yells to get our attention and we see he's been caged by Lockshock and Barrel. So we quickly make our way to where the mayor is and free him. After doing so, we ask him if he knows where any other holiday doors are, and he tells us he saw some of Oogie's goons heading towards the rooftop, so that would probably be a good place to start. Chapter 15 is yet another boss fight, but we're fighting Lockshock and Barrel all at the same time. But this fight has 2 phases. One where they are all in the tub, and one where we fight them all without the tub. For some reason this fight was really funny to me, just picking them up and throwing them into each other. The fight was really easy though, and after defeating them we're rewarded with the Independence Day holiday door. Jack is fed up with their schemes and is about to punish them, but then they open a shadow that swallows Jack up and he has no idea where he is. Now we're in Chapter 16 where we are forced to explore this place we've fallen into. So honestly, this chapter has my favorite level design by far, because they do a really good job here at making you feel like you are being watched. The entire time the music has this vibe to it that gives you this uneasy feeling, and the entire time Oogie Boogie is constantly heckling Jack by trash talking and quietly saying his name in the background of the music. The platforming here wasn't too bad either. This unfortunately doesn't last very long, as the next room is a fight against another spider, but afterwards we go right back into the spooky vibes from before, thank God. After we make our way through the platforming, we go straight into the next chapter, which is another boss fight against Shadow Oogie again, but this time green. So, in my opinion, this is the best video game version of Oogie's casino area. It looks so much better and closer to the movie here than it did in Kingdom Hearts 1. So here, we face off against Shadow Oogie once more to the tune of the Oogie Boogie song. The fight has a lot more added to it this time around than Oogie just throwing dice at you. The fight has a pattern to it as well. First he begins with the sword cards, then dice come up that you can throw at him, then he starts sucking and you can throw the dice into his mouth. After this, he walks around and brings out 3 nutcrackers to shoot Jack. Believe it or not, actually, this boss is kinda difficult but still fun because of the music. After we defeat him, Oogie bends over for some reason. His shadow is gone for good and we're given the Easter holiday door. Chapter 18 starts with Jack rising from the fountain and telling everyone he's on his way to go defeat Oogie Boogie once and for all. But before he heads to Christmas Town, he tells the mayor to go free the holiday leaders so they can be prepared to go back to their respective holidays after Oogie's defeated. We now head to Spiral Hill to make our way towards Christmas Town, but before that, we have to go through the graveyard again with Zero to find the key that opens the gate. Once we retrieve this key, we head to the door and make our way to Spiral Hill. And once we make our way to the top, we see there are holes in the shape of all the holiday doors we've found so far. We use these to then be able to go across the hill to the Hinterlands. But before we go, we see Sally at the tip of the hill, and Sally tells Jack she's worried about the dangers past the Hinterlands will get the best of him. But he assures her everything will be okay because she gives him strength, and we enter the Hinterlands. Chapter 19 starts with us seeing the Hinterlands. At first, I assumed the look here was on purpose, but then after finding one of the evil Oogie doors, the black and white went away and I saw that it was just the door that was causing it to happen. In all honesty, I almost prefer the black and white look more, as it looks more like it was drawn and the game graphics make it look really cool. So basically this chapter is kind of just going to be going around to the holiday doors and taking out waves of enemies until the doors disappear that Oogie placed there. Honestly, just another really short chapter. Next chapter though is another boss chapter, but this fight is one of the worst boss fights of all time. Here we have to fight two big enemies at the same time, but here's the kicker. They have undodgeable attacks and can randomly go into shadow mode to heal. This horrible combo means you're gonna die a few times before you get lucky enough to defeat these two. I actually had to go into the settings and turn something on I had no idea was even there. Health bars. Health bars in this game are optional. I went through the entire game up to this point not even knowing they were there because they hide them in the menu. This is by far my least favorite part of the entire game, but that's okay. It literally only gets better from here. Chapter 21 is insanely short. We just go back and swap all the evil doors with the real ones and head into Christmas Town. Not really too much to talk about, so let's move on to my favorite part of the entire game. We start chapter 22 with the mayor freeing the holiday leaders and yelling to Jack that they're free as if he's somehow gonna hear that, so that's cool I guess. But as soon as we land in Christmas Town, I begin to hear what I thought was going to be an instrumental of Oh No, but it was actually just the actual song. This alone made up for that horrible boss from a couple chapters ago, and this was quite literally music to my ears as I could not get enough of it. This chapter has us talking to the elves and finding the lost ornaments to go into the tree. This is where a couple of those required hidden areas are that we have to complete to get a couple of the ornaments. After we do this, the doorway opens up to the main part of Christmas Town. In chapter 23, we hear Oogie telling Jack Merry Christmas, and Oogie has tied Santa to a pole, and if the train cuts the rope, he meets his end. This fight is interesting because you have to balance damaging the train and keeping the train from running into the rope. This is the one boss fight that feels like it overstays its welcome, honestly, because there isn't a lot happening here aside from getting to hear Oh No again, so that's always nice. After we defeat the train and set Santa free, at first he isn't happy to see Jack, and Oogie is mad Santa was set free. Santa's worried he can't deliver presents this year. Luckily, Sally drops in with Jack's sleigh so they can chase Oogie. Sally tells Jack the mayor returned all of the holiday leaders, and Oogie gets away. However, the elves slipped a Halloween present Jack gave them into the sleigh to scare him and the reindeer to help him. Here we are, the finale. This final chapter opens with Oogie flying the sleigh in the moonlight, but the present goes off and Oogie gets sent flying towards the ground, exclaiming he is the 7 Holidays King. He then gets angry and bugs bring him material and go inside him to make him gigantic. This honestly is a really cool design for Oogie, as I was kind of just expecting the same original look, but bigger. They even gave him a little crown. So entering this boss fight, I thought it was going to be a musical boss, but it ended up just being a platforming heavy fight. Basically, all we have to do is lure Oogie into the gas and go into Pumpkin Jack mode to make the gas go off to damage Giant Oogie. We just do this for a couple minutes and we've beaten the first phase. Here I was pleading for a phase 2 because I really wanted the finale to be a musical boss, and luckily I got exactly what I wanted. Phase 2 is entirely a musical boss with no actual combat. It basically acts as a third phase to the Oogie Boogie song, as Jack uses all of the powers he has unlocked in the game. This was my favorite part of the entire game and made the finale even more fun than it would have been if it was just normal gameplay. And after we deal the final blow, Oogie begins oozing bugs as he dissipates into nothing, completing the final chapter. After this, we see Santa is finally back in his sleigh after having delivered the presents, thankfully in time for Christmas. Jack asks for forgiveness, but Santa assures him he is thankful for saving his life and returns to Christmastown. But we return to Jack and Sally, and Jack tells Sally he will be staying in Halloween Town as the most wonderful discoveries are a little closer to home. And with that, we are done with The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge. So when I was little, I was such a huge fan of the movie, I had the 2-disc collector's edition and watched that movie all the time. If I had this game growing up, I'm sure I would have loved it just as much because it is the perfect companion piece to the movie. While the game does have its flaws, it is still wildly enjoyable, and I would recommend this to anybody who loves the original movie. So I would say I give this game a nice 9.5 out of 10. But what do you think? Do you enjoy The Nightmare Before Christmas? Let me know in the comments below, and have a wonderful day and a happy Halloween.